I am confident that the free dissemination of international news through such a graphic medium as the newsreels will be of immeasurable assistance in the great tasks ahead of us all. In the light of the need for continuing ever closer relations between old allies, I am pleased to note the new working alliance between the Pathe News Organization of the United Kingdom, the Pathe News in France, and the Pathe News in the United States.
Thousands crowd outside Buckingham Palace, despite the fact that it's about 7 o'clock in the morning, to watch a procession pass down the Mall under the splendid coronation arches in rehearsal for June the 2nd. With blinds drawn, the Royal Coach of State provides the glittering centrepiece of the procession as it moves towards Westminster Abbey. The large crowds make the organisers think twice about the figures they forecast for Coronation Day. The Coach of State arrives at the Abbey where Her Majesty is to be crowned. Pathe News is ready for that historic occasion, all set to film the full splendour of the momentous day. The world's finest equipment will be used, including the largest telephoto lens in the world and the zoom lens, which cost over £1,000, to bring the complete magnificent spectacle to this theatre. More than 30 Pathe News cameramen will film the coronation. Men like Bill McConville, who will be home from covering the news in Kenya, Bill Jordan, recently returned from the Korean battlefront, veteran Ken Gordon filming his 4th coronation, Jock Gemmell with over 40 years behind a Pathe camera. All these, plus the unequaled experience and skill of the men and women behind the scenes, will bring you the coronation of Her Majesty the Queen.
why the cockerel? Why was he chosen as the Pathé trademark?
Well, there was a rumour that when Pathe opened their first building in Wardour Street in 1910, a cockerel flew onto the roof, and they've adopted it from that particular situation.
A likely story.
It was. Really, I think it is because it's the emblem of France, and Charles Pathe, the originator of the Pathe organisation, adopted it as his trademark.
Well, he's a very fine fowl, better than the budgie guy anyway. So he started here in 1910. What were the early newsreels like?
Well, they were rather flat newsreels. They were very short, run for about 4 minutes, and they were issued bi-weekly, twice a week.
Harry, over the years you must have accumulated a fantastic amount of film. Have you any idea how much there is?
Well, we've kept all the film that was ever released by the Pathe organisation in this country anyway, and it's estimated that we have probably 50 million feet
50
of
million?
35mm film.
That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, you've got these 50 million feet of film, but if I asked you to find me a bit, I hired a bit, as it were, for a programme, say, like this, how do you set about finding it? I mean, let me give you a challenge. Let's take the Hindenburg disaster, the airship disaster in 1937, I think it was. How soon could you put your hands on that?
Well, we have to catalogue all this material and cross-index it, and we put it in these fireproof drawers, and we open the drawer at the particular headed references, which are on the front there, and we pull out the necessary drawer, and we run down through the main headed cards, air displays, issue rescue.
Fly pasts, helicopters there, hovercraft, record flights, parachutes. Must be getting closer.
Yes, here we are.
And there we are. Abracadabra.
General view of ballast being released, giving the impression that something is wrong, and indeed it was, badly. Well, where do you go from there, then, once you've found the card?
Well, of course, this card conveys the location number of the vault that it's in, and of course, if we like to adjourn to the vault, we will find the film and then put it on the machine and show it to you.
How did Pathé get the Hindenburg story?
Well, this is probably a normal routine camera assignment by the Pathe News Company of America to cover this airship arriving at Lakenheath in America, and it was nothing unusual expected until the ballast started being thrown out, and they obviously realised there was something seriously wrong, and they carried on covering it, shooting it, and eventually, of course, the airship burst into flames.
And it turned out to be one of the most historic bits of film of all time, I suppose,
I would think
didn't
so,
it?
yeah, quite definitely. Yes.
Let's have a look at it.
This is a now-it-can-be-told story.
At what stage in the convoy did the tragedy of the Barham happen?
It was the following day. I used to sit up on the upper deck most of the time when I was at sea, and I usually went as high as I could for two reasons, one for protection and one for you could see more. So I used to sit up on the Admiral's Bridge in the battleship, and I was sitting up there all day long. Because you had to be around, as you appreciate, you know, the incidents at sea always happen so quickly that if you weren't there, you didn't get them. But about 4:30ish, I was a bit thirsty, so I thought I'd go down for a cup of tea. And I'd just got off the bridge, and about 2 flights down, ladders, and I heard a terrific bang. I looked round, the ship went hard to port, and I could just see the Barham ahead of us. We were steaming in line ahead.
How far away was she, roughly?
Quite close, actually. A few cables, I think they call them. Anyway, it's quite close. And we had to turn very sharply to avoid hitting her, because she just stopped dead. And I just saw at that particular moment the spouts which the torpedoes throw up when they hit anything. And I'd seen them before in other operations, so I knew what had happened. But,
how many were there?
There were 4, in fact. It hit her in the engine room. And she listed rather badly straight away, as you saw in the film just now. And so I thought, well, I sort of rushed up as fast as I could back to my camera and started to film. I took a shot and I thought, well, I wonder what she's going to do. You know, we used to use cameras at that time which only ran 200 feet, which is about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So we had to use this sort of camera at sea because there were clockwork and we didn't have to worry about batteries and things, that sort of thing. So I thought, well, shall I change the film or not? And I thought, well, I think I'd better take another shot. She was listing rather badly. And I started to film and I saw she started to turn over. And I got a bit worried about my film. And I thought again, I think I'd better change the film because she'd probably turn turtle. And as I was sort of trying to make up my mind what to do, it blew up, as you saw.
Terrifying explosion.
Yeah, terrifying. So in an occasion like that, one's mind sort of goes pretty well blank anyway, and all one's thinking of is the picture, actually, which one shouldn't do, of course, but it was only afterwards one realised what really had happened.
Do you rate that your most vivid experience as a cameraman?
War experience, yes. Mm-hmm.
You've had a good deal to do with royalty in your career too, haven't you?
Yes, I have, yes.
When did that begin and where?
Well, it began as in an official capacity, you know, attached to the royal family about 1952, just before the Queen became Queen.
Did you cover any tours with them?
Yes, I went around Canada with her when she was Princess Elizabeth. And then when she became Queen, I went round the world with her in the Gothic and was at the Coronation and that sort of...
Now, the 1953 Coronation was rather special for the newsreels because it was the first one they'd ever covered in colour, wasn't it? On that kind of occasion, were you just plonked in one spot and told to shoot away, or did you rove about and see what you could find?
On that particular one, I did rove around, in fact. Usually, it depends if one is on a thing of that event, it's so coordinated that everybody's got one specific job to do. I mean, you're in one of a large team, as you know.
John, thank you very much.
God, the crown of the faithful, bless, we beseech thee, this crown, and so sanctify thy servant Elizabeth, upon whose head this day thou dost place it for a sign of royal majesty.
Television, of course, became the arch enemy for the newsreels, didn't it? More about that in a second. But in the early days, when television was just sort of being invented, I imagine that newsreels just saw it as another scientific crackpot thing on the horizon.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, so John Logie Baird was tinkering around with an old ex-wireless sort of thing in Charing Cross Road, I believe it was, and Pathe went down there and shot him at work, and never realising, of course, that sooner or later it was going to kill Pathe newsreels or any other newsreel.
Well, when in fact did Pathe fold up as a newsreel operation?
Pathe folded up as a newsreel in 1970.
What was it about the competition from television that newsreels couldn't cope with?
Well, it was, I think, basically the speed of it all. You see, the fact is that although we could cut and edit a newsreel at much the same time as television do, it was a question of making 200 or 300 prints to get them out in all parts of the country.
Yeah.
And this was made it 2 or 3 days late, whereas by the time it reached the cinemas, of course, it was history.
Although, ironically enough, there's at least one instance where the newsreels managed to cover an event and get it on the screens the same night, at least in London. I'm thinking of Churchill's funeral.
Yeah, that was so. I mean, so there was a lot of pre-planning done. There was certain setups in certain positions en route to St Paul's. Dispatch riders were commissioned, and the film was brought back to Technicolor. Technicolor were all ready to develop it, and it was back in London, cut, edited by the afternoon.
But that obviously would have been too expensive a business to do every week, on every story, wouldn't it?
You couldn't do it every week, no.